All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
And today we are going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, or I should say the DE version. We're going to be giving our impressions with the game, so we're going to keep it mostly non-spoiler. We have played the original before, so we got a good comparison to kind of see which one's the better one, or just which one do we prefer, or if this is a good version. So we're going to be talking about that. And then we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered. We got a release date finally, and there's some interesting features that are announced for, as well as some possible controversy surrounding it, or just some lively debate. And then we got our Discord community questions from Valvedrix and Shatera, who says, with Valvedrix, what is your favorite character progression system in the Final Fantasy series? And then Shatera says, if you had to select one game that students had to experience and study like you did in high school with classic literature, what would it be and why? Do you even think there is a game that could be included in that capacity? It can be any game, RPG or otherwise. So we'll be talking about that to close out our podcast. But to start us off with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, God, it just rolls off the tongue now. We already covered in the prior podcast, I don't like publishers and game developers calling their own game definitive. I want fans to say that. But anyways, the DE version, we've looked at some scores here. And if you look at Metacritic, the reviews are actually really positive for this game, which isn't a surprise because I know all of us, when we did our 10 best games of the last decade podcast, I think Xenoblade Chronicles came up for all three of us. So we all had very high thoughts of the original. So the fact that this game is getting, 9s and 10s out of 10s all over the place is not that surprising, but there were some, a little bit more good to mediocre reviews. And one of those reviews that's getting a ton of just hate is the IGN review for Xenoblade Chronicles. So if you're not familiar with this, Xenoblade Chronicles was the review, and they had a video review on their YouTube channel, and it's currently got 9.6K downvotes and 1,000 upvotes. And it's just trending right now to hate on this video. And it's kind of crazy because if you type in Xenoblade Chronicles review, this is the first video that comes up. It's got 140,000 views. And you're like, oh man, this must be a great review. And you click on it and it's like just hate, pure just hatred. People just are so mad at this. And I mean, there's a lot of things people are mad about. And I just have to say that I feel that after kind of looking at the sheer spectrum of things and complaints that people have, there's some complaints where I'm like, you guys got a good point. Let me downvote this, to some of the more extreme complaints where I'm like, okay, you guys are being a little ridiculous. So just kind of a broad stroke here. The three biggest complaints that I saw were in the video review itself. There's actually a major spoiler in the video footage. And this was addressed several times in the comments, several hundreds of times. And all they did was they left a little pinned comment saying, hey, sorry, there's a spoiler at this time frame. Please skip it. But, a lot of people don't look at the comments. So that's one of them. And then the other one is the voiceover for the video is mispronounced. They're mispronouncing the character names. So we have Dunban, who is now Duncan, I think was the biggest one that stood out to me. And then Ryan, which is now Rain. And so that angered a lot of people. They actually fixed that and they re-uploaded the video, but people were even more upset that they left the spoiler in there. And then the reviewer claimed this was the best version of the game, but gave it an 8 out of 10, whereas the original Wii version, it received a 9 out of 10. Now, I don't know about you guys. I know that we kind of talked a little bit, but for me personally, the biggest thing there is the spoiler in the video footage. A lot of people were upset about the voiceover getting the names mispronounced, but they were implying that the reviewer didn't play the game. and the person providing the voiceover, it was a different person.
Right.
It wasn't the guy writing the review. So that's a little unfair. And you accused this person of putting a late game spoiler in the review. So apparently they did play the game. So
Also, people need to see this too. Is that this is? But let me ask first. Is this the same exact reviewer who reviewed it years ago?
well, that was my third point, that this is a totally different reviewer.
Yeah.
Right. So this is what I don't like, that how people perceive these websites. I'm not necessarily defending IGN as a whole, but there are individual journalists who write this, who work for IGN. So one person from IGN could review Xenoblade, and then another one reviews Xenoblade, and their opinions and scores are probably going to be much different from each other. So I don't get why people have to insinuate like the whole IGN works as a collective. Like if one person is 9 like out of 10, everyone else at IGN is 9 out of 10.
Let's think about it this way. GameSpot, they gave Final Fantasy VII Remake, the journalist that reviewed it, they gave that review or that game a 10 out of 10. So let's say a new version for some reason comes out on the PlayStation 5 and a different reviewer reviews that game, and they personally feel that that version of the game is better in every way than the prior version. It's got better graphics, it'll faster load screens. Maybe they added some new features, some new story sequences, whatever the works. They like, this is the best version of the game. I would only recommend this version of the game if you can play it on the PlayStation 5. And then they're like 9.5 out of 10. Like, are they required to give it a 10 out of 10 because the other guy thought it was a 10?
No, completely different journalists too.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
And even then, if it was the same journalist, if you've played both versions of these games, you could say that this is the definitive version and still have grievances with it on some technical levels.
sure.
Like there's like we're going to get into it in a minute, but like there are a lot of things about this game that greatly improve upon the original, but at the same time there are things that hold it back from being the best experience it could be.
Yeah.
So, if that reviewer was willing to overlook those bad marks, but still feels he needs to bring the score lower because of it, but he still thinks like the other features still outweigh that, you kind of have to look at it things that way. But of course, people won't. They just scroll down to the number and be like, "What?" it's it's not higher, even though he says this is the best version.
Yeah, the thing is, for me personally, and I know everyone's different, but for me personally, I got a fair amount of range with the scores to where it takes a lot for me to get irritated. And I personally would not rate the game an 8. I would rate it much higher than an 8. I don't know what I would give it. I would have to think about it, but I think it would be in the 9 range for me. And so that's significantly lower than I would give it, but it's an 8 is still good. For me to get absolutely upset, it would have to be a 6 or a 5 or something really obnoxious for me to be like, why did you publish that? You know? But an 8 is just maybe stylistically it didn't really jive with that person and all the things that Eric brought up. But Stan, did you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, I think more what got people angry was just the fact that the review was not like you mentioned, all the errors, that it had in there. And that made it kind of a meme to hate on it, and that's how it kind of spread.
Yeah. I
That's
just, yeah.
like if it was well thought out, um, like well structured criticism like of the game, and then gave it an 8, right? Then I don't think people would be quite as mad. But it's like the guy gave it an 8, and then there were like objective errors in the script. So then that gives everybody an opening to say like this guy doesn't know what he's talking about and kind of discredit the review rather than just hate on it, right? That's why
Right.
it has so much attention.
So I tried to go through and I spent a decent amount of time just reading some of the comments and criticisms, and some of the like objective things that people felt like they got wrong, I feel were very subjective. Like I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, they said it takes 100 hours to beat the game, but it only took me 80." They said it was a grindy game, but there's a new casual mode that makes all the grind go away. And I'm like, like they've never reviewed a game on easy mode, or
Right.
they've they've said Melia's character is weak and she's the strongest character in the game. And I'm I understand from a gameplay perspective. I think Stan, you brought this up when we were talking about a little bit that she's gameplay wise the strongest, but I
She
saw
is.
this so yeah, but I saw so many people claiming that her story was so strong, but it had such a bad resolution that they decided to make a prologue because it was so strong. And I'm like, you're probably saying the same thing the reviewer is,
Yeah.
that it had a bad resolution, you know? And so anyway, I found some of the most of the comments to be very hyperbolic, but I do agree with you. Like, how did the mispronunciation errors? How did that happen? Even if
Yeah.
it's not the same person, like because give you guys some context for RPG fan, I recorded a voiceover for Fire Emblem's Centered Shadows DLC, and I mispronounced one of those names. I did it like 3 times,
Mm.
right? And I didn't even notice I did it, recorded it, and then they sent me an email the next day and said, "Hey, can you re-record these sentences? You mispronounced the name. Here's how you say it." And RPG fan is much smaller than IGN, right? So
Yes.
if they're able to catch and less well-known characters, by the way, in Centered Shadows compared to Xenoblade, so it is a little baffling from that regard that happened. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
just
Like.
They must have played it in Japanese because the way the English voice actors say their names to each other is pretty funny. It's very charming, but it's funny. You got Ryan who'd be like, "Shock, what's going on?" And or like when Dunban's here, everyone's like, "Dunban,"
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's the way they pronounce it. It's just funny in a way, and it just makes it really hard to forget. But I can understand. There's plenty of games I have played the first time, and I can't remember every single character's name
well
in my
the
head. But if I feel like I'm unsure, it's as simple as a Google search.
yeah.
But
And
maybe in their head they thought, "Oh yeah, it's definitely Duncan."
well,
I
once
guess it was the script. Probably whoever wrote the review just wrote Duncan. Maybe even a typo, right? Because that's not too far off. And then there was just like Pat was pointing out, like a lack of review, like a lack of editorial review
right.
that caused that error to get through.
Well, the thing is, once I saw people were realizing that it wasn't the person that wrote the review that recorded the voiceover and edited the video,
Hmm.
right? Because that person probably got the game on Saturday, and then they had to beat a 100-hour experience in 4 days, and then write a review and like have it go back and forth between the chief editor and like get it approved. So that person's not also recording the voiceover and editing the footage. They have video editors that just do that. So I saw people were saying, well, the video editor should play the game also with the journalist. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know how many games they freaking review in a month? And that guy has to like edit all their YouTube content and all their reviews. Like this
Yeah.
guy can't beat 30 games a month. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's something. Why exactly are people mad? Why does
I
it
don't know.
matter
It's
that
the 8 out
one
of 10.
reviewer from one review site? You're all bored, is what I'm saying.
If this game got a 9.5 out of 10, I don't think there would be any nearly as much
I'm still an
anger.
advocate of getting rid of review scores. I know I'm the minority of that, and no website will agree with me on that actively does that.
Hmm.
But think about it for a second. If this review was written and it had no score, and neither did the other one, how, how much would the outrage be beyond some differences of opinion or spell checking of names?
They wouldn't really, because the everybody would just walk away with the last line where he said this is the best version of the game, right? And everybody would be happy. But it's only because he gave it an 8 that everybody then, really, like I said,
Nitpicked it.
nitpicked, and there was obvious things to nitpick.
Oh
So
yeah, very big things. Well, I think the biggest thing that I still am baffled by is that spoiler. It's a pretty big spoiler too. It's still in the review, and it's the most watched review. I don't think it'll spoil the game if you watch it and have never played the game before, because I don't think you'll have the context. But I think that if you're currently playing the game for the first time and then you go watch that review, that will absolutely spoil it. So
Oh, let me tell you guys this. Maybe I've said this before, but when I was looking so forward to Skyward Sword and the reviews were coming out, they were like 9s and 10s across the board, except like 1 to 2 reviewers. One of them actually happened to be GameSpot, who dared to give it a 7.5. Now, I personally don't care for these reviewers' articles, but when I actually read it, in retrospect, he was absolutely right. It's like the game is fun, the game is good. It's a good Zelda game despite some linearity and backtracking, but the controls can be cumbersome to work with, especially like when you constantly have to recalibrate them or they don't 100% respond to what you do, which is completely true. If anyone who's played Skyward Sword can attest to it, and if they say the controls worked for them 100% of the time, they're lying. um, but yeah, he gave it a 7.5, and there was so much outrage towards him. And I was saying to myself, just like, why? It's like you already know you're going to buy the game if it's upsetting you this much. Like your thought process of what you, like your influence to get the game is going to be that. And the amount of people who will only listen to that review is very minimal.
right.
And it's like you can't get worked up over one reviewer.
Well,
You want to listen to multiple people and you just want to create a consensus of if this is the product that's for you.
yeah, it's almost like people want from the reviews though, they want a retrospective type of video where it's just very like positive. Let's talk about like the blood, sweat, and tears the developers put into working on the game. And it's a review. It's one person's opinion, like Eric you were mentioning, and it's just kind of weird. I find that some people will get really they just want that validation that somebody else appreciates it like I do, and they're a professional, and now I know that I can enjoy my game.
Yeah, and as Landinator, sums it up very well. It's
Laninator, yeah.
people need to have their personal opinions validated. And if it goes against it, because Xenoblade 1 is pretty much a universally acclaimed game. Most people who have played it have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, and that's similar with Zelda. Ton of Zelda fans. One of the biggest game franchises in the world. So when a score a little lower than a 9 or 8 comes out, fans go on the outrage. I remember Jim Sterling. I think it's the reason why Jim Sterling doesn't put scores on his reviews anymore, is because he put 6 out of 10, no, 7 out of 10 for Breath of the Wild, and people lost their minds, and they were DDoSing him and everything just because there were some things he didn't like about the game.
He's
I
still
was like, my God, people grow up.
he's still like in his videos, he'll still reference that game, Breath of the Wild, and he'll still kind of troll people. I saw one video recently where he said, yeah, and the worst video game of all time on the Switch, Breath of the Wild. Yes, that's a fact. And then he'll keep going. Just like, dude, he's just, he doesn't actually think that. He knows it just pisses people off, so he'll say it.
Yeah, you are allowed to disagree with people without going into an outrage over it. You can give your comments below and be like, I don't agree with your review because such and such and such and such, and
Yeah.
there you go. And if people agree with you on the bottom, they'll contribute also. It's as simple as that. You don't need to be like, hey, everyone go after that guy in IGN. He gave a game score I didn't like.
Yeah, he's not writing the Constitution. You know? Like, it's like, well, what's in this? Let me get really upset about it. But all right, are we ready to transition onto our impressions, or is there any last little thoughts we want to bring up about the IGN review? I meant to say basically that I still am baffled the video is still up because of the spoiler, and I don't understand how the name thing happened. That seems a little egregious, but I spent most of this time just defending it, surprisingly. But any other thoughts on that before we move on? You good, Stan?
Yeah, I think we covered it all. It wasn't a very well written review, but it certainly, yeah, I don't know if it deserves all the backlash it's getting, but
Yeah.
What can you do if, like Eric mentioned, this behavior, we have seen it before.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't quite as bad as the Breath of the Wild situation.
Yeah.
People will forget it by next week.
Yeah, they'll move on.
They'll find something new to be outraged at.
Yeah. All right. So as far as Xenoblade goes, though, did you guys have any trouble getting the game, like picking it up?
I got it digitally, so no.
Stan, what about you? Did you get a physical edition?
Well, no. My sister was getting she's importing like the super special collector's edition from Europe.
Yeah.
But it was delayed. Like it's not even here yet. It won't be here till probably this coming weekend. And I was too
hyped.
Yeah, I guess. And I just bought the digital version anyway. Plus, when she gets it, I think she's going to want to play it herself first, at least for a little bit. So I'd be waiting even longer than that. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to get it.
See, I ended up getting the digital version too, because I think it's because I had such good luck with the Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I pre-ordered it last minute at GameStop, and then they actually called me a day early and asked me if I wanted to just buy it then. And I was like, oh, this is great. GameStop should do this more often. Yeah. And so I had that experience. So I didn't bother pre-ordering this game because I was like, I'll be able to get it. And then I was trying to get it on Amazon like a week ago, and the earliest it would ship out was like June 3rd. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I was like, I'll just call GameStop. And they were like, nope, we're not taking any more pre-orders. We won't have any additional copies on launch day. And I thought about going to Target or Best Buy or something like that, but I didn't really feel like going on tour to try to find the physical edition. So right. I just bought the digital version and just said whatever.
I just got the digital and played it right when it hit midnight. That's the nice thing about first party Nintendo games. It hits right at midnight Eastern.
Which 9 p.m. Pacific for me. So it's not even like just when it hits that hour they release it for everybody.
See, I tried playing it at like 11 and it still wouldn't let me play it. So
that's weird.
Yeah. But I mean, I kind of am getting into the vibe of playing digital games. I still prefer the physical, but I have to admit, now that I've been doing it a little bit more because we're in this situation that we're in right now with quarantine, I've been doing more digital games. And I mean, I bought it while I was at work. And then when I got off work, it was already downloaded. And it told me...
I thought to myself, I already own 3 copies of the game.
Yeah. But this is the definitive edition. Anyways, how far...
I definitively got it on digital.
How far have you guys gotten in the game?
I've been doing all the side quests.
Me too.
That's been come up along the way, but I have gotten... I'm trying to say it without spoiling it. I've got to the Satoral Marsh, doing side quests there right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been doing, like you, all the side quests I can possibly do. I've even been like searching them out, changing the time of the day to see if there's any left over, because I've just been doing them all, because this game will let you do the reactor stuff fairly early. So I'm just like collecting as many materials as I can. I'm trying to do all the quests and build all my affinity. And I really like that aspect of it. The quests are kind of crap, but just the exploration and just kind of venturing forth and feeling a measure of completeness. So I've been doing all the quests. So I'm about 15 or 16 hours in, but I'm still a little bit after the Guar Plains.
Yeah, I tell you, the money from the side quests is nice, especially when you want to buy those new tiers for your abilities.
Oh
Those
yeah.
are really expensive. Like so far, I've been able to buy all the ones just because I've been side questing.
Oh, dude, I'm rich. it's great. It's great. I don't worry about money at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. Stan, how far are you?
Pretty close to where you are, I think. I haven't been doing all the side quests that have come available yet, but I just found all the locations in the Gower Plain, and so I'm moving on from there.
Okay.
Well, I haven't finished all the side quests in that area yet, but I fully explored it, and I did all the Colony 9 ones that were available to me when I
So
was in Colony 9.
yeah, there's one quest I forgot that I have not. That's one quest open that I have not been able to do yet, and it's mainly, and I forgot about it, but I remember it from the original. There's a giant spider that
Hmm.
like climbs over the edge of like this crater. When you get up close to it, I am like, holy crap! I forgot about that, and it's like 15 levels higher than me. So
Right.
yeah, I tried fighting it, and it was just like, no, dude. I could probably get it, but I was like, let me just continue with the story a little bit, and I'll come back. So, but yeah, so we got a decent amount.
Landinator is
But
asking, are the side quests handled better than the original?
yeah, well, moving.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna. How'd you guys feel about the quality of life improvements? We kind of tie that in. I think the side quests are really the biggest navigation wise, the biggest improvement for me.
This is where the argument of the definitive edition comes in because
Hmm.
they greatly simplified the UI in so many ways
Yes.
that like it's easy to find everything. It doesn't feel cluttered anymore. There's quest trackers now, so you don't have to just randomly search around the fields or anything or look up a guide. It's like it gives you a general idea of where these side quests are and lists it much better and organized. It's and in terms of those quality life improvements, it's pretty outstanding.
That quest marker is like you're emphasizing here. That is probably the main reason I will say do not play any other game version of this game because that just makes it so. I guess if you're not going to do the side quests, then but it still helps with the main quest too. But dude, just having that dotted line that shows you how to get to the side quest is so much better than just the simple colored cone that tells you to go north, and you're you're like, where am I going? It's so much better. Stan,
Yeah.
how are
Yeah,
you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Stan, you got some thoughts?
That's a huge improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about some of the other quality of life improvements that they put? We said the new UI that was pretty good.
This is
Uh,
what I love. What they did in the combat is one tiny little thing,
I
and
know
it
what you're gonna
makes
say.
such a difference for how efficient you can be in combat.
Hmm.
Is they added little exclamation points next to the your
It
ability
it's so
if you're
good.
properly lined up. So many times in the original game, I got frustrated. It didn't perform what it was supposed to, the after effects, because I was slightly off on like a side attack or something. Now it lets you know when you are in the absolute correct position to hit it. And I've not missed like any of them.
Dude, that's honestly like I'm with you with that. At first I wasn't sure if that was in the original because I didn't feel like it was. I remember being a little bit confused sometimes or just missing it. And I went back and checked and yep, that's a new edition and it just plays so much better that way. I There's a part of me that feels kind of cheap by it just because it's telling me what to do, in
Yeah.
opportune times, but I'm okay with it.
Not
I,
necessarily. It's just like a small guiding hand you still have to know which ability to use next on your own. It doesn't necessarily tell you that. It's just letting you know that you're lined up correctly with it.
Yeah, so for example, a lot of the moves you have to be positioned correctly on the map. So you might have to be behind the enemy to use it. So the exclamation mark won't appear until you're behind the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll be able to use that move. Once you use that move, that'll aggro the monster. It'll turn around and look at you. And then you can use a different move to basically make the monster turn back around. And then use another move. So, I mean, there is strategic value in it, despite the fact that there's exclamation marks there. It's not telling you, go run behind enemy, or anything like that. So.
One more UI thing I absolutely love
Okay.
that they did. You can choose what outfit you want on the characters now.
Yes. That's
Dude.
a big improvement.
Yes.
That is awesome. Now my characters don't look stupid and mismatched now.
Yeah. Dude, in the original, there's some outfit, some armor set where Shulk is basically without a shirt on and he's got goggles. And it's like the best armor for like 8 hours.
And you get the like super serious moments and he's wearing just like a bathing suit and sandals. It's like the stats are nice.
Yeah. Dude, that's such a big improvement. That way we don't have that moment with those cutscenes. It's more immersive that way. Stan, you look like you've been trying to say something. We keep cutting you off.
Oh, no, I agree with everything. One thing to mention about the little exclamation points
Mm-hmm.
on the UI is I believe you can turn them off if you really don't like them.
Oh, that's good.
But then also they pop up on the combo abilities where you have like a break and then break topple days. So if the enemy is suffering from break and you have a topple ability that's ready, like Ryan's
Mm-hmm.
wild down ability, it'll appear on that as well. So you don't have to be like kind of looking at the enemy and being like, is that enemy suffering from break? Like, can I topple it right now? You can just look down and see if that hint marker is popped up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's much better in that regard. In addition, on that point, though, they've also added some help features with the reactor. It will actually make suggestions for what you should mix together and kind of helps you along with that process, which I'm okay with because I found myself in the original, basically when you have to combine stuff together to get certain reactions, I found myself Googling a lot, trying to figure out what was the best combination for stuff. And this just kind of like simplifies that a little bit and just says, hey, here's some possibilities here for you. And you can kind of make that determination without having to Google it. I mean, I understand there's some strategic value in like memorizing outcomes and stuff like that. But I mean, let's just operate in reality land. Everyone's Googling it. Don't make me do that. So I'm okay with it. So, did you guys try that? I know it's from Xenoblade 2 and the other one, but the new challenge mode type deal where it's like a little portal that you go into.
I've accidentally ran into it a few times, but I've not actually engaged with it.
Yeah, why don't you have to press a button to enter it? Because I'll just be walking by it and like I'll just, I guess, walk too closely to it. And I'm like, crap, I'm getting sucked into this thing now.
yeah.
It's so annoying.
I tried it out. I did one battle. So yeah, I tried it once and I didn't get really. I lost the first time I tried and then I won. But the rewards I got was not enough for me to buy anything from the Nopon store. So
you're just like, yeah, I've kind of like been in the attitude where I'm like, I don't really feel like doing this right now. I think I tried to look at it initially when I first saw it, and the first challenge was level 25 or something like that, and I was level 8, I think, or something like that. And I thought, well, I'm not even going to waste my time.
yeah, you can do the limited challenges though, like
well, now I'm like level 30 something. So
yeah, I was able to do like a level 20 challenge when I was only level 15, but that's because I chose the limited one where you play as Ryan and Shulk, and then brought me up to level 20 anyway.
Oh, so it kind of
yeah.
matches your level then.
Yeah, but it also like your moves on the bottom of like your loadout, essentially your equipment and your like Ryan's abilities, and I had to control Ryan, not Shulk, so it's like it's kind of like they create the scenario and you have to deal with it. You have to try and tackle it that way.
Ian asks, can you swap characters in battle? No, you cannot. The game is still, this game's combat has not been changed for the most part.
Yeah, I
Like,
was
it's
disappointed
still,
by that.
It's still Xenoblade 1.
Yeah.
It like I was trying to think of a reason why it wouldn't let you do it in this definitive edition. Since they've changed other things, just adding that would have felt okay. I can't really think of a reason why they wouldn't want you to do that. Like it would break the game, because a lot of times I'm like breaking the enemy and I'm just like, okay, Ryan, I need you to topple the enemy now. And he's just not doing it. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's decent. Like it usually gets the message, but you know, just being able to transfer over to him and just select that ability would be nice. I guess
Yeah.
that kind of defeats the point of chain attacks though, right?
Maybe so. Yeah, a little bit. But maybe they could balance it if you like spent one block of your party gauge, you could switch the party leader or something mid battle. That might be a fair compromise, but
Interesting.
they didn't do that. It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Ian. If you didn't like the game before, this version's not going to change your mind.
I think that's fair. The, the only other
If
thing,
you loved it before, you may love it more playing this version.
yeah, the only other thing that I can think of as far as like quality of life changes is we brought up the quest tracking, but this is more of a kind of head scratcher moment. But there's like 3 freaking maps, right? And I can't remember how if it's the exact same thing on the original, but you have basically you'll have your mini map in the corner, then you have a fast travel map, and then you have a quest map. And it's kind of annoying because the dotted line only shows up on the mini map and the quest tracker map, but it doesn't show up on the fast travel map. But the fast travel map is the only, well, it'll show like little exclamation marks. That's it. So you have to search for it, but that's the only map you can scroll on. Does that make sense? So the quest map, it'll only show like a third of the map. And I'm like, where's that dotted line going? You know?
Yeah, funny thing is, when every time I keep pulling up the map, like,
Oh, dude.
I keep getting a habit of going to the area changing map instead of just a mini map by clicking in the left stick. I keep pressing Y instead.
Well, the thing is, yeah, that was one other thing that I thought was weird is to open up the regular map, you press one button, but then to close it, you have to press a different button. And I thought, like, I kept running the same thing where I would open the map and then I would press the same button that I opened it with, and it would just open up another menu.
Yeah.
And then I would be like in this infinite loop of menus. And I'm like, get me out of here. And until I finally took a moment and figured it out. But now I'm used to it. Now it doesn't bother me at all. But it was something I kind of had to get used to at the beginning. But by and large, the UI is much better. Definitely much better.
Yeah, it's significantly improved.
All right. Was there anything about the quality of life improvements we wanted to bring up before we move on to the next resolution deal?
I think we got them all. I think the quest tracking is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Just knowing where exactly all these NPCs you need to go to are. Because in the old game, you'd pull up the map, or you'd pull up your quest menu, and then you'd be like, okay, what do I have to do next? And it'll say, go find Roland or whoever, right? And you'd be like, I don't remember who that is, right? And then you had to go to like the affinity chart and find Roland and find like where he is normally and like what time of the day he shows up.
Yeah, it's
And
very
Oh, that's
convoluted.
one thing. I hate constantly switching the time to just see where they're from.
Yeah,
I would like it like in the quest tracker if it told me like this is the
nighttime.
time range that he is in. It's like no, I have to keep going around the clock. I keep going like every like 3-4 hours to find them.
Well, if you
Yeah.
press, I don't know if this is exactly the same thing, but if you press the right trigger button, it'll come up with the kind of whatever's your active quest, the synopsis. And if you select a quest that's currently not available, like let's say it's in nighttime and it's only available in nighttime and you're in daytime, it'll just say unable to do quest at this time, try changing the time. And then you can just change the time and then it'll show you where to go. But
Yeah.
you have to,
Yeah, that's what I do.
but you have to find the quest first, obviously. So that's kind of a hassle for sure.
Yeah. And then also like that is a huge thing. And then also the I think you already mentioned before, like you have to collect the blue collectibles that are like scattered around the map, but you need like whatever, like 3 chewy radish or something. In the old version of the game, you're just collecting those blue things until you end up with the 3 chewy radish that you need. But in this one, if you track that quest, it's going to give you those exclamation points on the map. That's like they're right there. Like go get that one and go get that one and go get that one and then you're done.
Yeah.
I can already see this quest tracking feature just knocking hours off of the game. Like
Yeah.
hours of tedious running around the field till something pops up.
If you've never played this game before, you can tell all of us did not like the quest system in the original. Because we're just talking about this quest tracking like it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's true. It really is. It's made the game so much better. Eric, I completely agree. I can't believe, even with me doing all the quests, I feel like I'm just like plowing through this game like it's nothing.
This game is just one of them that quest tracker is so much needed just because the way they built and designed quests don't give you like a real sense of direction of where you have to go to get it. So the quest tracker is just making up for that poor design.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly like a game that's like telling you where it is or like giving you a hint where it is. They don't really give you hints or anything.
Yeah.
So you just kind of run around the map till something happens.
Yeah.
It's so much better. It's so much better. All right. Well, that's the quality of life stuff. One of the biggest things that I've seen a lot of people talk about is the resolution, and not that it's
But this is we're going into graphics now, essentially.
well. I mean, kind of. The biggest misconception I've seen with it is when people start criticizing the resolution, other people will start bringing up how, like the aesthetic, that they like the aesthetic, which that's kind of separate because the resolution, when people are criticizing the resolution, basically it just looks a little muddy. And the reason people are complaining about it is because it's a Wii game that's been ported to a modern console. So it's basically almost a 10-year-old game from the Wii days, and it's been ported to the Switch. And in dock mode, it runs as low as 504p all the way up to 720p for cutscenes and story sequences where you're not really doing anything, so it doesn't have to maintain that frame rate. It'll jump up to 720p. But for gameplay, generally when you're running around outside and stuff, it drops down to somewhere around 540p or 504p. And that's kind of confusing because it is a Wii game. And we have other games that were on newer consoles that have been ported to the Switch, like Skyrim, that runs native 900p. We had Dragon Quest XI, which runs at static 720p on portable mode, and it actually runs a little bit higher than that, 900p on docked. So it's a little weird that a PS4 game is able to run higher, and even like The Witcher 3, high-end PlayStation 4 game, it got ported to the Switch and it runs at lowest 540p docked, which means it runs a little bit better than Xenoblade. Obviously that's more detailed game, so it's the difference is going to be a lot more obvious, but just the resolution is kind of, some people it doesn't bother, other people it does, but basically if it's bothering you, the reason it is because when you take an image that's not being natively ran at 720, or most people thought a Wii game would run at 1080p natively. If it's not running at native 1080p and they're just upscaling it to 1080p, what that means is they're taking the image and they're stretching it out, and then they're using AI essentially to fill in all the little holes of the image. And so the AI will actually guess, what is supposed to be in those holes. And so it'll say, like, for example, it has a whole algorithm, but it'll say, okay, well, there's a green color here. So odds are there'll be a green color here in this hole. And it'll do that across the whole screen. But what ends up happening is you don't have very crisp lines on characters. Grass, a lot of times, is the culprit. That it won't have very fine lines in the grass because there's a lot of green all over the place. So a lot of the lines that were present are now kind of smudgy, and it makes it really blurry. And people were expecting that this Wii game was going to be native 1080p or at least native 720p. So a lot of people are kind of disappointed by the resolution of where it's at docked, and then undocked. It's sometimes it's hitting as low as 378p, which is less than the Wii version was.
That's definitely in handheld. I've been doing a mix of docked and undocked, and it definitely drops that low sometimes on the device. Not that often,
right?
But it does when things get a little intense.
There's been a little speculation though, because the biggest thing is Xenoblade 2 was the same thing, same exact resolution range. And the thing was, people just thought back then in 2017, I know it's, new hardware. Maybe this is all the Switch can do. But since Xenoblade 2 has come out, we've seen The Witcher 3 come to the Switch. We've seen Skyrim come to Switch. We've seen the Outer Worlds coming to Switch. All these games are coming to the Switch that we didn't even think the Switch could even run. And it's running it at sometimes a higher resolution. So it's kind of like, why is this Wii game not able to do this? What's wrong with the Xenoblade games? Why are we not getting these at a higher resolution? And people are kind of speculating that perhaps it has something to do with the Xenoblade engine, that maybe that was optimized for the Wii U and not optimized as much for the Switch, because you can see things that are pointed out by Digital Foundry, for example, where they show that they had to make the trees not sway when they swayed in the original Wii version in order to maintain the frame rate. It's like, why? It's a Wii game. So there's some people that are pointing out that maybe they should just use Unreal or a different engine in future releases in order to kind of get it where some people are wanting it. I don't think it looks bad and docked, but I did notice it was a little muddy at times.
Yeah, they're really bad at optimization. I really think at this point in the year,
Breath of the Wild was 900p.
Yes. What I think first off, Breath of the Wild, which they helped develop the map for,
different engine though,
can run at resolutions that high and still look incredible, rather if it's docked or undocked.
Maintain the frame rate, everything,
They can't take this game and do the same thing. If I was in a position at Monolith and I cannot get a game that's been out for 10 years to run 720 and 1080, or at the very least, like 900p docked or something, I got to go back and we got to figure out exactly what is going on and what we need to change. Because while these visual improvements are really nice, I really feel like sometimes that Monolith Soft prioritizes looking good over proper optimization. And I will say this, it's much better than Xenoblade 2. Xenoblade 2 on handheld looked like extreme hot garbage. It was all fuzzy, heavily pixelated looking. It was so awful looking. I immediately had to put it back on the dock. Like, I could not play that game off the dock. It was that bad looking. And I'm not a stickler for this either. If it's not like at a perfect resolution or a perfect frame rate or something like that, I'm more forgiving of this stuff. But Monolith Soft kind of hits a sore spot with me, not being able to take a game like this and truly flesh out how great it could look in 720p and 1080p.
Well, why is The Witcher 3 running it slightly better and docked? It's a PlayStation 4 game. You know, I know they spent a lot of money porting that, but it's just baffling. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, you
Okay.
didn't cut me off. I don't know. I'm just baffled. It's like like I said, they even helped with the map for Breath of the Wild, and they have this knowledge and this technology to do that, and they're backed by Nintendo
Yeah.
on top of that, and they still can't manage to pull off a proper resolution. It's just mind-boggling
Well, but
how poor they are at optimizing their games.
I guess like what gets me, and I'm with you. I'm not a stickler either necessarily. We've talked about this before when it comes to graphics, and I like things to feel like it's been fully realized and not held back by the hardware or held back by like the engine or whatever it is. So Octopath Traveler, for example, I think that looks perfect. I don't need hyper realistic graphics. I don't need, you know, I don't think that looks like crap, right? I think it looks everything like it should. I feel Breath of the Wild looks everything like it should. And when I look at this game, especially with the like updated visuals, it looks like it looks like if this was just at a higher resolution, not upscale, but at like native 720p all the time or 1080p, like this would just be freaking beautiful. And it is beautiful, but it would be so much more. And so whenever I'm playing it, I keep seeing these beautiful vistas and I'm like, I wonder what that looks like without some of the
Yeah.
smudginess. So
But no, don't get me wrong. It looks fine in handheld mode. It
yeah,
looks fine.
yeah.
It's not Xenoblade too bad. It's definitely decent looking on the screen, but it does because they use some kind of softening tool to make up for some of the uh, you may be able to explain it better, huh? But they use a kind of softening tool in the handheld mode to get rid of that pixelation
Yeah.
look that
No, that's
Xenoblade
essentially,
2
yeah.
had. And it looks decent when they use little substitutes like that, but it could look so much better if the right people were optimizing this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that for the next game, I hope that they either optimize the engine more or they go to a different engine. But it's not all doom and gloom because I think a lot of people aren't even going to really notice. It's kind of, so Stan, I know you said it didn't really bother you at all, right?
Yeah, like I mean, I didn't notice it until you linked me a video showing the comparison of like the Switch version running between 500 to 720p, and then the Dolphin version at 1080, right?
Right.
And
Upscaled. Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, okay, yeah, now I can see like yes, like this image is like it's not as sharp, right? Because that's really what it is. It's the sharpness of the image,
Right.
like how
Exactly.
clear it all is. But then not to yeah, like basically I'm not one of the people who notices unless you compare it to something better. So when I'm playing the game, it really doesn't bother me all that much because I'm more focused, I guess, on the improvements that they've made since I'm familiar with the original, like the visual improvements.
Hmm.
So you mentioned like the trees don't sway, right? Which is something that Digital Foundry pointed out, and then like, yeah, that's weird. Like they used to sway in the wind in the original, and then if you look at the grass, even in the definitive edition,
It still
the grass
sways.
has like an animation that it sways in the wind. So it's like, why the grass but not the trees? Wouldn't the grass be a higher drain on the frame rate since it's like almost everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know. I wonder if maybe because, and I'm just guessing here, but I noticed the grass has an animation that moves, but it's not like when I run through the grass, it's not parting. You
No,
know,
it's a it's even a like a lot of it is like a 2D image, right? So if you like look at a bush and then like rotate the camera,
mhm.
you'll see that like this the bush is like facing you the same orientation no matter what.
Okay. It's like, stop
Yeah,
looking at
but
me. Yeah.
yeah, but if you're just running past it, you're not going to notice that, right? It's going to feel like it's a bush there, right, that you just ran by. But another thing is like there's like reflections in the water. At least this is all docked mode. I haven't tried handheld at all, but
Hmm.
the original game doesn't have like reflections. Like if you're swimming and there's like a mountain,
Yeah.
right? And you won't see the mountain's reflection in the lake if you're playing the original game, even if you're playing it on, Dolphin, because the emulator can only upscale what the Wii version is, right? And
Right.
have there's like better textures for it, but it doesn't have improvements like the shadows also.
Yeah.
So in the
So,
original game, the shadows are just like a little black
mhm,
circle underneath the characters to
right.
kind of like represent that they have a shadow. But in this definitive edition version, like the, the character's shadows is actually like of the character. Like um if I look down, I can see like Shulk's like shadow, like his arms, like as he runs are matching up, with his shadow. So
Yeah. That's
those
one.
are like little improvements they've made that are better essentially than the original, and that makes kind of those little things all added together makes it feel more like um, an upgrade, right?
Mhm.
Not to say that those things wouldn't look even better, right, if we had a good resolution, but like I feel like those things make up for the lack of the optimized resolution for me anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like all the things that you pointed out, I think are like just awesome additions. And I'm glad you brought up that shadow deal because with the character, because I remember looking at that. That's something I always notice. And I was like, man, was that in the original? And I'm glad you pointed out that it was just a circle, I guess, in the Wii version. So, but yeah, man. I mean, if you guys are curious, you can just Google or look up on YouTube. There is some good comparisons between the Switch version and then Dolphin. And Dolphin's still upscaling it. It's not running it native at 1080p, obviously, because it's not rendering it at 1080p. So you're still going to have a similar effect, but you can apply all these post processing effects that kind of negate some of the hiccups you can run into that. So it kind of makes it really crisp and clean, and those rocks look really really detailed. So it's pretty interesting to see a comparison because, like Stan's pointing out, you know, with the definitive edition or the this new version, they did do a lot of work with the graphics.
Hmm.
You know, they did do a lot of work with just making it more updated. It's just really just a resolution thing where it could be a little bit better. But I mean, when this thing hits 720p though, during like story sequences, I mean, it's like, and it hits 720 like in like town and stuff a lot of times too. Like it does. Like I'm like, man, this looks great. So
Yeah,
it's not,
Yeah. I think it looks really good where it counts.
yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of the wonderful new aesthetics, the
Yeah.
wonderful new aesthetics.
How do you guys feel about the new art aesthetics? I mean,
Um, I'm
but
I mostly like it all.
I'm still like the only thing I'm with you. The only thing that I'm still getting used to is Shulk.
I think Shulk is my number one concern. I think they made him look younger than he is.
Yeah.
But I think almost everyone else looks very faithful to their original design. They don't look
R-
like they got the artist from Xenoblade 2 to come in and do them. It's
Ryan's a brunette now, which doesn't bother me, but he was a redhead before. But that's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to get mad about that.
yeah, it really looks like they just took the original models and tried to get closer to what their vision of it was. and I think they did a good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they look a little too bright and colorful compared to their original artwork,
Yeah, I
but
kind of like the Vagrant Story style characters that were in the
mhm,
prior version. I would have liked if they gave it like more of a Zodiac Age treatment, where they just kind of detailed the faces more,
mhm.
rather than just make an anime face. But
Yeah,
I wonder if the anime face works better with the dynamic resolution.
I think I ultimately would have preferred that also, but for what we have, the characters don't look bad at all. There's a strong argument of which version of the characters look better, like the original with looking closer to their artwork, or more the newer ones with like graphical improvements. I don't think you're going to go the wrong way either way, but there are going to be clear preferences for one or the other. I'm kind of like in the middle. I think some things look really good. I think some things look off.
Yeah, like Shulk is, like you said, the the biggest change clearly, like of any of the main characters. It looks much different in this art style, but like Dunban looks very similar.
Dude, that guy looks badass no matter how. He's just a badass. You could change his art style, he's still badass. But
Yeah.
Shulk is the odd one out, and he doesn't look bad. Like I think if I've never played this game before, I probably wouldn't notice it. But the reason it kind of I'm still noticing it is because there's a few amount of suggested romances between Shulk and these other female characters, and he looks a little too young to be dating some of these characters now. Or he's supposed to be around like the same age as Ryan, and Ryan's looks like it's like his older brother now. It's
Yeah.
it's
His age is 18, I believe, but you could confuse him for somebody 14, right? If you just looked at the face and didn't hear the voice.
yeah. Well, there's
He has kind of the mature low voice for the in the English version, right?
mhm,
But the face, uh, unless he's kind of like making like an angry face, right? Like then
yeah,
it's a little bit better because the eyes aren't so wide,
right.
right?
I think
But
his voice alone helps me remember that he's actually like 18,
yeah, yeah,
because he sounds older and sophisticated
hmm
in his speech, and he doesn't sound like a teenager necessarily. So
right.
it helps keep it intact there. But yeah, he definitely looks a lot younger, and none of the other characters suffered that same fate.
Yeah. There is this moment, and I don't want to linger on this any longer than we need to, but I forgot, but it's kind of funny. There's this moment in the game where they're just basically going through some backstory stuff, and they're talking about Shulk, and they're like, yeah, 14 years ago. And he was like, oh, yeah, I barely remember that. I was just a little kid. And I remember thinking, like, looking at the character model, I was like, I would have been surprised you were still alive. Like, are you like zero? you know, but I mean,
I'll
it's
say this though: the Mechon in the game look 100% cooler. Like
Oh
they already looked cool in the original game, but the new coloring schemes and touch ups and that they did to these Mechon are really nice looking.
hmm I don't know how much of that is due to the art style or just the like improved textures, like for all the enemies.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Probably so. Yeah.
yeah. Tayson Gaming Spot. I don't know how long your question's been out there, but he wanted to ask if I've been using my upscaler, my M Classic, on this game, and how does it look with that. So the M Classic, it can boost games up to 1080p or 1440p if your TV supports it. And it's kind of not really plug and play because you have to limit the switch to the base resolution that the game runs at. Because when you have, it struggles a little bit with dynamic resolution. So, like this game, for example, whenever it's switching between the different resolutions, it kind of struggles to keep up, but then it'll catch it. But I mean, yeah, playing the game in 1440p, upscaled anyways. It looks good. It looks really good. It's still muddy, just because we're upscaling it, but it still looks, yeah, it looks really good. I can definitely see a big improvement. So I don't know if you've bought an M Classic, but it is $100. So research it before you check it out. But yeah, I really like it. So it looks really good. But yeah, I'm surprised though with the art aesthetic though, how much I am liking it. Aside from Shulk, like we've already brought up, but most of the other main characters I do think look pretty good. Like I don't have an issue with them at all, and I'm actually getting really used to it. So it is a little bit weird that they only did, like for example, Shulk, they did his face and his hands, but they didn't. They left the textures for his body from the original. It's the original textures. It's kind of strange, but
Yeah, but don't get us wrong. Don't get us wrong. I still think Shulk looks really good. Like his character model is well designed, and like how his hair is like reflected and like to like his character and everything. It looks really nice. It just looks different.
Yeah.
yeah.
Different to the point it may make you conceive the character a little differently than the original game.
Yeah, but all the other, aesthetic updates, I guess, I think like this game looks really good. Like Stan was bringing up with the reflections in the water, the changes with the shadows. It's some of the NPCs. It looks like they didn't update completely. They don't. Some of the like the townspeople and stuff. They still look kind of rough.
Yeah,
But
especially when you get like some close-ups on them, like in some of the cutscenes.
yeah,
Like clear that they're like a lower priority model than the main characters and even some of the NPC, like the more important NPCs, right?
Have
they're
you
like,
guys gotten to the point where you've met a Theron yet?
I'm not there yet.
In the Ether Mine?
I
Yeah.
haven't made it that far.
His character model fascinated me a little because it looked like I think it may have been my eyes tricking me, and the dungeon is like a more darker area, but it looked like he had outlines around the outer, like his character.
Oh, like
Sort
a
of kind of looked like he had like a cell shaded kind of outer line.
Borderlands character.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it was really weird, and I was looking close, and I was like, "Is that like is there something different about him?" And I'm like, "My eyes must be playing tricks on me or something."
see, I didn't
I'll
even notice.
have to check. I haven't made it there yet.
Interesting. But yeah, I'm surprised. I'm mostly liking the new art aesthetic. I think the game looks really good. I thought I was gonna have more issues than I did.
Like even though the resolution could be improved, like significantly improved,
Hmm.
I think it's still the best looking version of the game. Like not just because of the graphical improvements, but also because of the UI. Like in the original game, like when you're in battle, there's just like the UI I think is like much larger. Like it covers up a bunch more of the screen, and so it can feel very cluttered. But like it's smaller. Like the character portraits are smaller, and they have a life bar now under their health, which like changes color as they're getting like low health, which makes it a lot easier to just like visually just like look up there and be like, oh, like Shulk is at like half health, you know?
Yeah,
Like
the resolution helps greatly with that.
yeah, so just visually, I think it is the best version of the game visually, even if it is running on like a lower resolution, because it's using better textures, like for
Hmm.
almost everything. And so like emulating the Wii version, you can only improve that groundwork that is there like so much.
Yeah. Well, I think like with all the new additions, in addition to a lot of the stuff you brought up with like the reflections and the new shadow work, and then some of the new textures, and then just the ease of being able to play it. Like I do think that this is the best version to play the game right now.
Hmm.
I would like, and it's so many quality of life improvements, and all the various things that we've just talked about. I couldn't. I I still think that if they would have just ported the original version, upscaled it, added some post processing effects, Like, I think I kind of would have liked that game, but I don't think I would have sacrificed the quality of life improvements and the other additions we got here. So I still think this is definitely a good release. So I don't want any of my complaints with the resolution to make people think that I hate it or anything like that. I'm having a blast with it. Have you guys attempted to use any of the different OSTs? I tried the new one, but some of it sounded pretty good, but I had to stick with the classic one.
They don't sound worse necessarily, but they do sound very different. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they brought up a really good point about it. Is that like the new soundtrack sounds good, or even great actually, but they feel like it's kind of pointless at the same time because they're not really taking the original and like stepping it up or making it better or making up for something that may have lacked or something like that. Like they just kind of use like completely different instruments um uh or something of the rather. And so it really comes down to, do you like one version or do you like the other version?
Mm-hmm.
This other version doesn't really enhance the other one. It just gives you a different take. And originally I was not a fan of it, and I'm still a little iffy on it, but I told myself keep it on there because I've already heard the original soundtrack plenty of times. I want to hear the new one, and I want to compare each one I hear to the
New and old.
original. So, but the ones I've heard so far have been okay. I think there have definitely been a few like battle themes I've been kind of with, but they're still very well produced. They're not terrible songs.
Well, honestly, I was kind of surprised that they even have a new soundtrack because I felt like the old one was really high quality. It had really high quality virtual instruments. So, and it's not like this isn't a live orchestra, right? And they didn't go and record like an actual guitar. It's still virtual instruments, from what I understand, anyways. So it was a little strange because the Wii's never struggled with its audio library, and I could understand if they went with an actual orchestra, that would be a reason to do it. But these are just remixes basically of the original songs. So yeah, it's not they're not bad at all. But like for example, Colony Nine's new track versus the old is both of them are very acoustic based. But if you keep letting the Colony Nine play in the original, that the Colony Nine song, the acoustic element is much higher in the mix, and it adds an almost percussive element to the track that kind of projects it along. Whereas in the new Colony 9 version, it starts off with an acoustic guitar just the same, but then they lower the mix of the acoustic guitar, and the orchestra really takes precedence. So it has a slightly different feel to it that is not quite as, I don't know, adventurous to me, I guess. It's not, but it's not bad. It's just a different take. Some of the new tracks I do like, for example, when you're first leaving Colony 9 with Ryan and you're going on your adventure, there's this violin track with someone looking out the window. And that was really memorable for me from the original as just being really well composed and just, it was perfect for the scene. And I had the new soundtrack on for that. And like, dude, they took it to 11. Like there was like a full, just powerful orchestra and just like, it was like really powerful. And I thought like, wow, this is a really good version, but I don't want to have to keep switching back and forth because I like the old one. I like all the old songs and the new songs. I like some of them and some of them I'm not a big fan of. And I didn't want to have to keep switching back. So I just put on the old one.
The biggest one I noticed the difference was, it's the one that you hear in a lot of event scenes, is an obstacle in our path. That themed, like when you hear a lot when there's like conflict and such. I really like the like bass in the original one, and they kind of made it sound a little more orchestrated in the definitive version. And I was like, I kind of like the rock theme feeling to it more than the orchestrated.
One of the battle tracks also has a like opera singer or female voice that's like kind of singing the melody, right? and it sounds good in the original, but in the new version, it actually sounds like they went with a new virtual singer, and that vibrato is so freaking obnoxious to where I'm just like, who thought that sounded good? But that was the only time where I thought, what's that?
I'll tell you, nighttime in Satoral Marsh, where I am right now, sounds very nice.
In the new version?
The arranged version of that is pretty nice. It's
I'll have to try that out. I'll have to try that out.
Stan, that's one of the best tracks from the original game too.
Yeah, that's right after where you guys are. I'm not far ahead of you.
Yeah. Well, Guar Plains, keep it on the original. Anyways.
Yeah. The one I noticed was the battle track, that the famous one that plays when you encounter like a rare monster, like You Will Know Our Names, I think it's called.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
It has a very heavy guitar
Yeah.
lead to it, but on the new version, it's like it opens up with brass, like it comes in with the brass first and not the guitar. And just because I was expecting to hear that guitar, I was like, okay, no, we're sending the battle tracks to original now, right? And I just left it like that because I was like, I can't encounter that the rare monster or whatever and not hear that guitar kick in right away,
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I switched the battle tracks, and then when I got to the Gower Plain, I was like listening to the music, and it's good music. It's like well made, well composed music, I think. But then I was like, something's not quite right, and then I switched it to the original, and I was like, oh yeah, and like the bass line and the drums are like more pronounced in the original version of the Gower Plain compared to the, and so I think that
I agree,
added like more to kind of the upbeat like sense of adventure but nature, like when you have the drums and the bass line are like more pronounced. I guess it's like a mixing issue, like you mentioned before. Like they decided to put the emphasis more on certain instruments, right, in the newer versions, which doesn't make them bad. It just gives a different feel to a lot of the songs.
Yeah, and if you've never played the game before, I don't think you'll hear any of these new songs and think this sucks. I think you'll think the soundtrack's amazing still. But being familiar with the old one, I just prefer that. You brought up a good point that I forgot to bring up, is that you can actually you can switch between having like the old battle music, but then I think it's the environment music. You can use the new one or vice versa. You don't have to be all in one way or the other, which I think is a cool choice.
Final Fantasy X definitely could have used that.
I like
because
Final Fantasy
some
X.
of the new tracks were good. Some of the arranged tracks were good for FF10, but that battle music, it was like someone like was putting a trumpet next to your ear every time, like the battle theme started. I'm like, God, ah!
Yeah. You want to sit front row for the orchestra. Yeah. Yeah. But did you guys try the Japanese audio? I like the English audio so much. I didn't even try the Japanese audio.
I
don't even think about it.
Yeah, I don't even need it.
On a previous podcast when we were talking about Charles Romana, I only ever even try the Japanese audio once, like a few voices like bother me, you know. And since these are all the same voices returning, I didn't even bother.
Yeah, I mean the voice acting in this game is, I think, excellent. So it's just not even. I'm just like there's no possible way I would prefer to play this.
Now we haven't done the epilogue yet, but I have heard that they got the same voice actors back, but they definitely sound like they're 10 years older.
I heard the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which is fair. It's like there's just no workaround on that unless you can get different people that sound exactly like they do. And I mean, those British voices, they are very distinct.
Yeah, that like rarely works when they try and recast a new voice actor to play the same voice. I feel like there's talented people that can pull that off for sure, but like how often that just goes wrong.
Well, it depends on how it's casted, right? Because didn't they use the same voice actor, for example, for like Ash Ketchum for Pokemon for like 20 years? It was a woman that was able to play a voice of this little boy, and she could just, but she was changing her voice to make it sound like a little kid. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're casting a character because they're a specific age, then that doesn't work as well. Yeah.
I will say too, I kind of feel like we should let Europe localize the voice acting sometimes in these games. Like they did it for Xenoblade and they did it for Last Story. And honestly, I mean, they sound a little unique at first because you're so used to like an American localization that it sounds a little weird at first, but once you like get into it, like they do a really good job with these characters. And I actually looked up and there was actually some high profile people that voiced Xenoblade in particular, but both them and Last Story sounded good. And it makes me think, why don't we just let Europe uh try localizing some of these games sometimes? Like especially if it's like a game that has like more that has more like a Shakespearean element to it.
Like Final Fantasy 12 or
Yeah, like a Matsuno game, definitely. I mean, granted, the Matsuno games already sound fantastic, but like, let it like if it's like more appropriate for like them to localize it, I think they should.
I'm kind of now you brought that up. I'm just thinking, what if for this new version of the game, they and their out of touchness, they said, you know what, for America, we're gonna relocalize this game for America, and they brought in like American voice actors for this version. I, I don't think I would like it. Like,
I was wondering if they were going to do that when they announced that it was going to be released in America the first time. I was like, are they going to recast and revoice it because it's already in English?
Mhm.
Like I would understand if it was like in French or German, the game, the European version, but like not. But if it's like already in English, I'm like, there's no point of relocalizing it
suddenly
for,
Ryan's from
for
like
North America.
West Virginia. So,
Man, I tell you, it's like I say that because you just maybe it's just a North American thing, but I just hear the same voice actors just get recycled over and over for these type of JRPGs. And of course you get unique voice actors once in a while, like the 7 remake and FF15 and stuff like that. But like at the same time, like most JRPGs, they get the same voice actors to come in and reprise these roles. And I'm like, there's Steve Bloom. He's doing his Spike Spiegel voice again for the 50th character. I've heard him in the JRPG. It's
gets old.
Sometimes they can do different voices, but yeah, oftentimes like they have like a kind of a default voice, which I think is just their natural voice, right? Or their
Right.
natural voice acting voice anyway. So you notice it all the time. Yeah, that is kind of a you wish there was more variety, right?
yeah, that's really all I ask for. And I'm not trying to uh take away jobs from voice actors, but if there's a game that more calls for like a unique taste in voice acting, they should more focus on going in that direction than saving money and getting your typical, you know, voice actors that are living in the basement of some some anime company. They're like, "Oh yeah, sure. We got Steve Bloom. He can play about 25 roles in that game for you if you want."
Oh, you don't want him? How about Steven Bloom?
We got Quentin Flynn. We got Johnny Young Bosch here.
Yeah.
Steven with a PH? Okay. Yeah, so but anyways, the voice acting in this game's good, so we didn't even try the Japanese. But it's an option there if you want to play it in Japanese. Is there anything else that kind of stands out with your impressions with this game that maybe didn't really fit in anywhere or that you thought you want to bring up? And, do you guys recommend this version of the game?
I will point out one thing that was not improved that I think should have been improved.
Oh, geez. Let's get into it. All right.
It's the inventory management of collecting all kinds of gear and items and whatnot.
So in
Yeah,
what
great.
way does that I'm not trying to play devil's advocate. I'm just what part of it?
There is no quick and efficient way to sell all of the stuff you don't want.
Yeah. Yep.
That's basically it. Like you should be able to, as you receive an item, like in the treasure chest, very quickly like see what it does, and then if it is like of lower standard or like compared to what you have, and then like mark it as junk or like mark it as like for sale or I don't want it, right? And then be able to go to the shop and just hit sell all junk. Like this is a feature that like a lot of RPGs kind of are implementing, right? That
Right.
a lot of newer RPGs have. That's like a quality of life feature that they could have probably implemented, but it wasn't there in the original, and they just kind of missed out on it. It's not in there, so
Let me ask before I complain about it. Is there a way to organize the equipment where it goes from light, medium, and heavy in their own categories, or do they stick to the numerical system on the right? Because I found it frustrating that I was digging through this gear trying to see if there's something better for Shulk or Sharla, who I use light equipment, and right now Grind can only use medium, so I put medium gear for him, but I'm constantly digging through trying to find light gear for Shulk when I would rather it just separated between medium and light.
So I don't know if there's a way to organize it, but generally what I do is I go at the top and I make my decision what I want to use, but then I'll just quickly press the down button and let it just zoom down and watch the numbers. And once I see all blue numbers, I look at it and see if there's anything regarding that armor that I don't want. And then if not, then that's what I choose. But as far as organizing it, I'm a little messy with my inventory. I haven't even sold any of my equipment. I just accept everything and it's just sitting in there. And 10 hours from now, I'll go to the shop and sell it and I'll cuss about it on that week's podcast. That it took 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it would be so much easier. Like you can mark a weapon as like a favorite, right? Like that's
is that an
my
option? I missed that option.
yeah, you
That
can.
weapon is a favorite. It's already equipped to my character.
Yeah, that's not
That's a good point. Yeah.
the, a marker that says like this one I don't care about, right? Like I don't like this one. Like I'm never going to use this. Like sell it at the next opportunity, right?
Right.
Like that just makes things so much easier. If
I
they
have one more real complaint.
Okay.
The game is that almost every other time you die to a boss, like I kind of had problem with the Zord fight where you have to like chain off other smaller or you have to build up your chain through other smaller enemies to get to him, and the crowd control kind of got out of the way. So I died a few times, about 2-3 times. Almost every single time the game kept trying to ask me to go to casual mode
Yeah, I didn't like
or
that.
put myself in this max HP, max chain mode. Now I was like, no, stop trying to make the game easier for me. If I want to put it on casual mode, I will know to put it on casual mode. You don't need to keep asking me
It's very
or telling me,
aggressive.
hey, you really suck at this boss fight. Why don't you put it on casual?
I have an idea. Easy.
that that kind of happened to me when I was up on the Gower Plain. I was exploring and
You're playing
ran
expert mode, aren't you?
yeah, but I ran into a high level monster, right? And I was like, oh shoot, I need to run away from this thing. And I wasn't looking and I slipped and I fell off, right, and died. And then it popped up, it was like, do you want casual mode? I'm like, how is casual mode gonna stop me from falling off the side of the mountain and dying, right? Like that's not gonna help.
Yeah.
I think it just triggered because I happened to be like in a battle because the monster saw me and like triggered the battle while I was running away. And so I
Yeah.
thought the monster killed me, but actually I fell off and died.
Apparently you fooled the game too. Yeah.
I
No.
have been to expert mode though, which allows you to you still get XP for all the monsters that you defeat,
Mm-hmm.
and you still get all the like the skill points and the AP for finding locations like on the map.
Mm-hmm.
It just the location XP and the side quest XP it like puts off in a bank for you to use later if you want. So it like keeps your level lower than it would be normally.
See,
And I think it's pretty nice because it's kind of like a if things are like really too tough for me, I can be like, okay, bump me up like a couple levels, you know.
Right.
or like I think I'm like level 18 or something. But if I used all my bankable XP, which is by character, it goes by character. It's not like a shared pool.
This
But
is
For context, there's an expert mode in the game, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't make the game itself harder. What it does, it's a modding like system
mhm.
where you create your own restraints. Like you put your own levels, you put what skills like you can use like at that level and such. You create your own difficulty
Yeah,
with it. It's like the game isn't making it for you. Like you create what you want to do. So it's good for people who have played the game several times already and they want to approach it in a new way. And that option is there for it. And you can turn it on and off anytime. So if you're halfway through the game and you're like, I made a horrible mistake,
yeah,
like you can, like Stan said, you can ease up on it.
See, I think that's an interesting way to go about it because sometimes I see hard mode when I first start a game and I think, I kind of want to try that, but I don't want to be in that situation like you guys are saying where I realize this was a mistake.
mhm.
Let me put it back down to normal, but now I have to grind in order to continue the story or, because I haven't been getting as much EXP or, I don't have any money or whatever the case. So the fact that they bank that EXP up there so that you can basically transition it back to a normal mode if you decide that's not really for you. That's pretty cool. That's a neat way to go about it.
Yeah.
And
You
I've
can also just toggle it on and off at will.
Hmm.
So like it's not like you chose expert mode and all of a sudden now you're going to have to be like dealing with this all the
but
time.
you still have to use that bank. What happens to that bank if you switch it to normal? Do you know what happens to it?
So it will
Apply?
it will start adding all the experience to your character, but the bank stays like locked, I guess you could say. It doesn't all of a sudden like dump it all into your character. But you can turn it on, right? And then any side quest you complete or landmark you discover, the XP goes to the bank. And then if you turn it off, well, then from that point forward, all the XP instead of going to the bank is going to your character like it would normally.
So, okay, let's say you have 10,000 experience points in the bank.
Mhm.
And then you switch it to normal mode.
It's
Does
still
does the bank?
the 10,000 still sitting in the bank, right?
Oh, you can still apply it?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it went away, if it just automatically applied the whole thing. Okay. That makes sense. That's pretty cool. I know with the casual mode, I've actually seen a lot of people talking about this casual mode. And for some reason in this game, it seems to be more socially accepted to use the casual mode than other easy versions because I've seen it in lots of places, even when we were talking at the beginning of the podcast, where people were criticizing that IGN review for saying the game was grindy. And people are pointing out that, well, just turn on casual mode, bro.
I think that's
And it's like, there's a lot of people that were saying that. And I was like, is it really that popular? Like,
the thing is if the reviewer puts on casual mode and then he says like the game was too easy and then people found out like through his gameplay footage
yeah,
or
they
whatever,
would be like, why didn't you put it on hard?
they'd be like, this guy is complaining it was too easy, he played on casual, like this guy's a noob or something, like that. You can't win either way for that guy reviewing the game.
Yeah. But I've seen it in a couple different places where some people really like the casual mode. Apparently, I guess it comes with the way it's named, but it's basically a story mode. So you don't really have to do any side quests. It's super easy. And if you just want like a clean story mode, casual's the way to go. And people have said that you can beat the game in 35 hours. I don't know if that seems crazy to me, but
Wow.
I don't know if that's scientific, but I've seen that number referenced. So I know that it took me 100 hours to beat the game originally on the Wii. So 35 hours seems crazy, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to think. But yeah, some good stuff. So would we recommend this version? I think I would.
Yes, I would.
Yes, very.
Yeah. Yep, definitely recommend. Looking forward to maybe a Switch 2 or maybe a re-release of this game in the next 5 or 10 years. I'll definitely be looking forward to that. But yeah, for right now, I can recommend this game. So definitely a great game here.
Gentlemen, I have something that came up, so you guys will have to finish the last topics
Okay.
without me. But I do wish you all a good night.
All right.
Good night.
No worries.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Easy, man.
All right.
Okay, so moving on here, we have Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered. Release date. Got some new features here. So I'm going to get the trailer up here. Stan, you want to kind of cover some of the details regarding this?
Sure, yeah. So we got some news that came from PlayStation blog is where I saw it popped up about Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered. And we finally got a release date. And it's been a long time coming. I believe the game was originally supposed to come out early this year, like in January, but it got delayed. Like many games got delayed this year. And
Sure.
the new release date is August 27th, 2020. And that's both for Switch and PS4, I believe. And that's a Thursday, I believe, which was kind of odd.
Yeah.
I don't. That's not normally a day that. I know Nintendo's games often release on a Friday. So, but that's the date that they gave us, and yeah. So
So some
they
of the features they added to it. Well, didn't they add some voice acting to this and some other features like that to kind of improve on the experience?
yeah, there was no character voice acting in the original game. It was all text. So they've added voice acting. I'm not sure to what extent it goes. They just said new character voiceovers. So I'm not sure if that's like only in battle, like kind of battle chatter, or if all the text will actually be voice acted. That would be quite a lot. And of course, the game is in HD and is going to have improved visual and audio. Um, they confirmed that it has online multiplayer with crossplay between PS4, Switch, and mobile, because the game is also coming to Android, I believe. Um,
That's awesome.
iPhone, I'm not sure, but I believe it said Android. Um, and then they said they've added new dungeons to the game. So I wonder if that's some kind of end game content that they've added, because the original game was pretty well balanced with how the dungeons appear on the map.
Right.
There's like certain sections of the map, and so you have to complete like one or two dungeons in each area before you can continue. And then at certain times you'd have to backtrack and go back to old areas and fight through the dungeons again, but they'd be like on a little bit higher difficulty, like depending what year you're in the game. So I want, if they're going to add dungeons, it'd probably be easiest just to add like some secret, like 2 or 3 secret dungeons at the end, like at the very end of the game.
Right. Just give something people to work for.
Yeah. And then they also have a new mimic feature that will allow players to change their appearance, their character's appearance. It says to match NPCs met during the adventure. So that's like a cosmetic thing. Like if you collect enough of there's like some currency that allows you to do that. You collect enough of it and you can change your character's appearance. So yeah,
Yeah.
pretty standard stuff. The biggest surprise to me was the voice acting, because that's like, I don't know how many people were like Crystal Chronicles, like, oh, that's an old game, but then like, oh, voice acting, I'm in.
Yeah.
I don't know how
That's
big of a improvement that is.
that's kind of my deal with it too. Is it's a welcome addition for sure, but it almost seems like a needless addition, and that, like you said, were people looking at this and thinking that it's too aged of a game, and people wouldn't want to buy it if it didn't have voice acting. I get, but I mean, I'm not complaining that it does. I think it's definitely welcome any of the new additions, and like the new textures, like it looks so much sharper and so much better, I think. So I'm looking forward to this release, especially the fact that we have that multiplayer online option, because I want to play this with you guys. So like this is going to be cool to be able to play this and go through some dungeons and check this game out. I played the original a little bit, but I'm not super familiar with it, so I'll be excited to pick it up. for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I played it with friends back in the day, and it was very kind of clunky and inconvenient to play on one console because everybody had to have their own Game Boy Advance, like
Right.
hooked up separate link cable, which was like a $10 to $15 accessory that you needed, right? So and you needed 4 of those.
I heard with this version, it's the same thing. You need a Game Boy Advance to
No,
connect to your Switch. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
Yeah, so it'll be pretty fun. This game's kind of a weird game though, because you know Square went a long period of time without putting games on Final Fantasy games on Nintendo products, because we all know the big story with Square leaving Nintendo and them basically not being on good terms. So we went the entire Nintendo 64 generation, and then came out on GameCube, and it was finally a Final Fantasy's coming to GameCube. And a lot of people thought this was going to be in line with the other mainline Final Fantasy games, because
right.
Final Fantasy spinoffs, while they were there, I think we had Chocobo Dungeon and stuff like that, they weren't really well known. And generally the spinoffs that we had were amazing, like Final Fantasy Tactics. So I think people saw Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles and they thought, GameCube, we're finally getting an actual Final Fantasy game. And so
Yeah.
I heard this from so many people that checked this game out, that that's the reason they bought this game. So I think it sold actually quite well on name alone. And like you said, the reception was, positive, but kind of mixed, because it wasn't quite what people expected. But it seems like people made the best of it anyways, and had a lot of fun with their friends. And for that reason, it's kind of a cult classic today.
Yeah. Once you once you get over that initial hurdle of like, hey, this isn't the Final Fantasy game I was expecting.
This isn't
Like,
Final Fantasy X.
yeah, exactly. Then once you realize what it is, which is more of like the gameplay, and like the gameplay loop is closer to like a Gauntlet Legends game. I don't know if you remember that old school
Yeah, yeah.
arcade game where it's like you
Lots,
choose a level.
lots of quarters.
Yeah, you got 4 characters. They go in, they fight the enemies, and it's kind of like a top-down perspective, or like maybe not completely top-down, but kind of like at an angle, 3D environments, and you kind of move from one side of the stage to the other. A little bit of puzzle solving, nothing too crazy, but that's the general flow of the game, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is not like a traditional Final Fantasy game at all. It's like a different genre almost, completely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's coming out. It's exciting. This is kind of weird because this was the first Final Fantasy port that they announced, or one of the first, if I remember correctly. And like since then, we've had ports that they didn't even announce at that time. So I think this came out. If I'm remembering correctly now, I have to correct myself. They announced this at the same time they announced Final Fantasy 7, 9, and 10 were coming to the Switch. So since then, we've had 7, 9, and 10. Then everyone got mad that Final Fantasy 8 wasn't coming out on the Switch. And then they announced that, and it was not coming out for like 6 or 7 months or something like that. And Final Fantasy, well, no, I think it came out a few months later. Regardless, Final Fantasy 8 finally came to the Switch, and we still didn't have a release date for Crystal Chronicles. So it's kind of wild that this is the last one, but I'm excited to play it. So
yeah, that was weird that Final Fantasy VIII beat it to the beat its release, even though it was announced way prior to that.
Yeah.
One thing that is kind of a concern is none of the official trailers or marketing, like from Square Enix, has said that local co-op is in the game. So like the idea of everybody playing on one TV with one copy of the game and one console, 4 controllers, like, because that's the way the original game was meant to be played.
Right.
They have pushed very heavily that it has online with full crossplay across the 2 consoles and mobile, but there hasn't been anything about the local co-op until we got an update on PlayStation.com. It says join up to 3 friends for online adventures, or bring everyone together around one TV for couch co-op play in your quest to save civilization. So that's the only place that has mentioned co-op, like local co-op play, for the game so far, and people are finding that strange. Like, if that is a feature, like, why wouldn't Square Enix like also push that? You know,
I'd
or
say,
did this one source make a mistake? Is that not in the game, and they just kind of made that error, because that's the only place listing that as a feature. So it's kind of a possible concern, I guess. We don't know for sure if local co-op is going to come with the game or not yet. So
yeah, it's kind of an interesting I don't want to say I guess it's kind of a small controversy, but it's a little bit of an interesting question because I understand people want that play ability because that's how they played it, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, however long it's been. But I don't know if that's really how I would play it now. I mean, I guess it might be kind of cool if somebody's over, hey, you want to play this and we can all play it on the same screen. But if I'm playing a multiplayer, I'm pretty much going to be using that online feature. I like,
yeah, if I had to pick one over the other, I would pick the online also, just because that opens up how many more people I can play with.
yeah, I mean, I don't really have sleepovers with my friends to play video games like I used to. So,
Yeah, but the days are long gone, right?
yeah, I mean, I'd still play games with friends, but it's just under different premises.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, it's cool. I can't understand why they would have that sentence. It's kind of a descriptive sentence to just throw in there like that. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
and like, why is it on the
PlayStation website?
PlayStation website in this one place, but you have to, but nowhere else? It's kind of strange.
Especially as yeah, are they implying that it's only on the PlayStation that it's co-op, like local co-op? Because
Yeah,
I feel that the Switch would be optimized for that. I mean, with the
yeah.
two Joy-Cons, I mean that seems perfect. Yeah.
Also, the original had every player had their own menu on their Game Boy Advance screen. That's part of why that was a thing. Is so that if I paused the game, the actual game on the TV kept going, like it didn't stop just because I paused to go in my menu. So I wonder how they will handle that if everybody doesn't have their own screen and you're trying to play local. So who knows? I guess we'll find out in a couple months.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. All right, so let's move on here. We got can you guess the RPG character? So we're going to reveal, Stan's going to reveal, or he's going to tell us the old character while I get it up here on the screen. And then we're going to pop up with the new character and see if you guys can guess it. So let me get this up. Go ahead,
Alrighty.
Stan.
Yep. So the character from last week, which was guessed correctly first by Unbound Monado, and then also guessed by Idris's Pieces, but just a few hours later, I think, just slightly second place. But it was Ark from Terra Enigma. It's a SNES game, action
Great game.
RPG. Yeah, that's was made by a company called Quintet that is no longer around. But they
Unfortunately.
made other games as well. I think people are more familiar with Illusion of Gaia.
Mm.
That was another one made. So
I really like that game. It's a good game. All right, so we're going to be getting our next character up here. And basically the idea that we're going on with this is that when you guess the character, if you're the first person to guess it right, you get 2 points. And then if you guess at all the right character, after that, you get 1 point if you guess the right character. So the idea here is we want people to try and get these characters and basically, shit, I'm trying to multitask here. We've already established I can't do that. Basically, we're trying to. There we go. Thank God. Okay, so if you guess the character right, you get 2 points first. If you guess the character right and your second, third, or whatever, basically after the first person, you get 1 point. And we're keeping track of that. And then eventually we're going to come out with a list of games that we're going to cover, and we want you guys to vote and pick which games, and we're definitely going to be taking you guys' suggestions and stuff like that under consideration. But how many points you have or how many votes you got. So if you are just knocking out of the park with these and you have like 12 points, right, that's going to count as 12 votes, if that makes sense. So if you're taking part in this and you're just knocking out of the park with these guesses, then you are going to be able to highly influence what game we're going to play. And you can guess by writing in the comment section of this YouTube channel. We keep track of that. It sends us an email when you leave a comment, and we can see who guessed first and everything like that. So go down into the YouTube comments and let us know who you believe this new character is. And we'll let you all know who this character is next week, if somebody gets it right. If not, we'll just keep it going until somebody gets it. But I want to take this opportunity to let you all know about our media partner, RPGFan.com. They are a great source of RPG news, game reviews, soundtrack reviews. They have other RPG podcasts on their website in addition to our own. Right now they got Random Encounter, which is RPG news and discussions. And then they also have Retro Encounter, which is a book-styled RPG podcast. So did I say book-styled? I meant book club-styled RPG podcast. That probably makes a little bit more sense. Anyways, but they're really good at podcasts. Go check them out if you haven't already. And also check out their YouTube page. Their YouTube page is just killing it right now. So they've been in the review business since the late 90s on, just written reviews, but they've been trying to prioritize their actual YouTube content more and try to, get more into video. So I've actually been helping them with that a little bit when they need it, recording game footage. I provided a voiceover on one of the game reviews as well. But they have a good selection of video reviews now. They're doing pretty good about getting these video reviews out, mostly for the bigger ones. But right now they got Octopath Traveler, Break, Boost, and Beyond. So that's basically like a review. Well, that's a review, but they also have a monthly news update as well. But they also got Yakuza Remastered, Trials of Mana, Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's actually my game footage, by the way. And we have Little Town Hero. I mean, they got a lot of stuff on here. To the Moon, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Fire Emblem, Three Houses Centered Shadows. That's worth my voiceover and gameplay. I didn't write the review, but, you can hear me on there if you want to check that out. But go check out RPG Fans' YouTube page as well. And it's got some good stuff on there. So, but moving on, I just want to let you all also know about some of the stuff we got going on with our channel. Like I said, we're going to be doing the voting here in the future for those that are taking part, but I just want you all to kind of get an idea of what we have on our channel in addition to our regular podcast. So we have lots of other game discussions that we've done. So we did a 3-part Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler discussion that you can find on here. We have a 3-hour Crisis Core spoiler discussion. We did a 4.5-hour Final Fantasy VII discussion. That was really cool. We did our first 3 podcast episodes ever was an extended Final Fantasy 15 discussion with me and Eric. And that was a lot of us complaining about Tabata for 3 episodes, but you can go check that out. We also covered Final Fantasy 13. We discussed the original Xenoblade Chronicles, all spoilers, Dragon Quest 11, Dragon Quest 5, Kingdom Hearts 3, Knights of the Old Republic, and Chrono Trigger. And we're looking to add a lot more discussion videos, spoiler discussion videos, not just impressions. These are full-length spoilers where we talk about the ending and everything. We're looking to add more of those discussions throughout this year. So look forward to that. And we're going to move on now to our Discord questions. Let me get this window back up so you can see our faces here. All right, we're back. So, community questions. We got one from Valvedrix who says, what is your favorite character progression system in the Final Fantasy series? And Valvedrix gives some options here. So we have traditional leveling, Final Fantasy 1 or Final Fantasy 4, weapon mastery, Final Fantasy 2, 4 different job systems like Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 5, Final Fantasy 11, and Final Fantasy 14, augments, Final Fantasy 4 Remake, Espers, Final Fantasy 6, Materia, Final Fantasy 7 original game, and Remake, Junction, Final Fantasy VIII, Abilities and Equipment, Final Fantasy IX, Sphere Grid, Final Fantasy X, License Board, Final Fantasy XII, Crystarium, Final Fantasy XIII, and Ascension, Final Fantasy 15. And the spinoffs work too. I'm out of breath right now. That was a lot. Okay. So, yeah, Stan, what is your favorite character progression system in the Final Fantasy series from what I read below? Or I guess if you want to get crazy, you can use the spinoffs too.
Well, clearly it's the Crystarium, right? No, I'm just kidding.
I figured that's what you were going to say. I mean,
Oh, no.
it's just very positive, always going up.
I would go, I'll go for a spin-off one, actually, and
Okay.
go with a job system from Final Fantasy Tactics. That's my favorite progression system in a FF spin-off game. And I think it works better there because your characters, due to the game, it's like a it's a tactics-based game, so it's like a 3D grid where you move your characters around, and there's like turn order and like height, like there's different height on the map that you can be on. So a lot of the job abilities like take advantage of those things, right? Like you're not just purely learning abilities, but like your character also has like a reaction ability, right? Like a counter
Sure.
attack that they can, which like the samurai one is really good. You have you also have like an equipment ability, so like a knight will learn like equip shield or something, but then I can turn that knight into a black mage, but then I can have equip shield, and so my black mage can have a shield or something, stuff like that you can do. There's also like a movement based ability slot. So like if I have like a dragoon, I can get like jump, like a jumping ability that allows me to like jump up a wall or like a cliff or something. And I can equip that, like I can change his class, but then like keep that ability, and like since he was a dragoon, now all of a sudden he can jump like up to really high places on the map and stuff, and like that's really cool, like that you can mix and match your job abilities, not just like like fire spells. Like it's more than like you can just teach your knight fire spells or something, and it's more than just like the equipment they can use. It's kind of everything, like everything about the game like really leans into that job system, and I think that's really cool. So
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I didn't even, because if you would have just asked me right off the bat, what's the progression system? I guess like I'm a little bit kind of like iffy because on one hand we have job systems, but then I saw with the first one, it's traditional leveling. And then, with Final Fantasy VIII, it's a junction system, but I'm like, well, that still has a leveling system too. So
I think they mean in what way do you learn abilities? Like in what way do your character stronger? And sometimes that's traditional leveling, but like the junction system is like way more important than what level you are, right? In FF8.
Right. Especially since there's level scaling in the game where the enemies actually match your level to some degree. It's within a window throughout the game. So it's, the junction's much more important. I think for me, and I've said this before, but I am such a big fan of Final Fantasy IX just because I love the variety of abilities that you have attached with the equipment, and that when you equip the new equipment, you're able to select only a certain amount of abilities that you can activate basically to use. And you can use those abilities while you have that equipment equipped. And while you're doing that, you're gaining experience for those abilities. But if you remove the equipment early, you can't use those abilities. Or you can keep that equipment on and master those abilities. But when you do that, in order to master the abilities, you're having to make a decision to forego using better equipment in order to learn and master those abilities in some cases. So what happens when you play the game the first time is you just play it like a standard JRPG, and you'll just get the first item and you're like, okay, well, this, equipment's pretty good, but the next place has better equipment. So I'm just going to equip that. And you just go through the game like that, playing it like that. until you start realizing that you're not keeping your abilities, or you're only keeping a few of them, that was some of the smaller and easier ones. So what ends up happening later in the game is you have to go back and kind of revisit some of these first area shops and buy some of this equipment to be like, well, what are some of the abilities I missed? You know, so it's still exciting to go back and look at the inventory and see the, the level 1 item had some decent abilities on there that you want to master. And during that process, it's still fun because now battle's really taken on a new turn, because you're sitting there trying to maximize your points that you're receiving towards this, and you're going and battling, and you're using like really terrible armor. So Zidane is now just getting thrashed, but you're trying to learn this ability, and finally you learn it. So it's just basically the fact that the equipment is usable throughout the entire game, and there's a lot of just decision and cost benefit analysis that has to go on, and basically strategic value that is applied to it. And I'm a big preparer. I like to prepare in my RPGs for an obstacle coming up. I mean, I don't know. Like, I used to watch Dragon Ball Z as a kid, right? And that's like, I kind of look at my JRPG experience the same way as a Dragon Ball Z episode, where they told you the Saiyans are coming in a year, and now you have to go in a field with Piccolo for the next year and just train your butt off for that. Like, that's how I play my JRPGs. Like, I know something's coming up. Let me just like crush this with like all my might. So I like to prepare for that. I like to make these decisions, try to get ahead by, using weaker armor longer, or, getting to go back and using some of the equipment that I kind of passed on. So
Yeah.
I really like that system a lot.
Yeah, not very many RPGs have a system like that where like almost all the equipment is useful in some way. Like the vast majority of them are just like you said. If you a normal JRPG, you go, it's like, oh, I'm at a new town. Okay, I buy all the new equipment and I sell all the old stuff. I'll never use it again anyway, right? And then, but you can't really play FF9 that way. Like at least not if you're progressing at a normal pace, right?
Yeah.
You can still do that if you, um, you know, grinded like all the like as soon as you get a new piece of equipment, you just like grind it until it's like you've mastered all the abilities, and then move on. But that you don't do that just like on a normal playthrough of playing the game. It's like you said, you have to pick and choose at certain moments, like prioritize stronger equipment with new abilities, or keep the older equipment on longer in order to max that out to learn those abilities.
Right. I would say maybe a close second. I'm a little mixed feelings, but I really do like the license board from Final Fantasy 12. I know that's kind of a controversial pick, but
No, fun. I like the license board.
yeah, well, more so in the original, just because they didn't let you see what the licenses were going to be. So
Yeah.
there was a certain amount of excitement that, oh, I wonder what's over there,
Mhm.
And I know you can just Google it and just look at the chart. Then you can just like cheese the whole thing, because you can see all the 500 HPs. But, in the new game, the new version, they just let you see everything anyways. But I really like the license board type mystery from the original. That it was very simple, but it was fun. It made no sense at all why you needed a
Yeah.
license to use a gun, or I guess, or a shield or whatever, but
Yeah.
whatever. But I had
I
fun
guess a
with it.
close second for me would be the Esper system from FF6. I like
That
that a
was good
lot.
too. Yeah.
For learning the abilities, though, I don't like that they have like a stat bonus associated with them, like that only activates on level up. So like Odin will give you like +1 speed or something, but you only if you have Odin equipped when the character levels up, then the character gets like an extra speed stat, or it's like that. Like there's another one like Shiva or something will give you +2 magic or something. That's like really annoying if you're like trying to optimize your characters.
Right.
You're like, oh, I want this character to be like my mage, like my damage dealer, like black mage character. And so you're switching all these espers on them to learn like all the different black magic spells. But then it's like, oh, they're about to level up. I better put my best magic bonus esper on them. And then it's like, okay, cool. They leveled up now. Switch them back to the other esper. That aspect is annoying if you like care to optimize the stats that much.
Right.
You know,
Right.
degree. But otherwise, I think it's really cool. I like it even better in Materia in some ways because like you teach the spell to a character, and once they have the points like maxed out, then they keep it, and you can switch them off like to something else. You know, versus the Materia, it feels sometimes like it's the Materia that's actually leveling up, not the character. You know,
This materia is getting so experienced.
yeah, like I can swap. I can give the Materia from Barrett to Sid or whatever, and it's like Sid is just as good at using Thundaga as Barrett is, you know, or
It's like Aerith hands cure to like Barrett, and then you just look at Aerith, and she's just like, I don't know how to use it anymore. I can't do it. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I know. I've like the thing is, I like Final Fantasy VII so much, and I do like the materia system a lot, but I kind of had similar issues, like you said, with the Esper system with materia, and that I just felt like there's a lot of me switching stuff around and just constantly moving stuff. And it was just like I spent a lot of time in the menu that I don't necessarily want to. And it's not bad, but it's kind of cumbersome. So it's not my favorite. Yeah. So yeah. But you know, all of them got their merits. So there's that. I think my weakest one would probably be maybe I didn't really like the Final Fantasy 15 one. I didn't hate it. It was just kind of there. I didn't like the Crystarium just because there wasn't a lot of options and it like topped off. Wouldn't let you keep going. And I didn't like the Final Fantasy 2 one. I thought the Final Fantasy 2 one where it's weapon mastery based on what you use, I thought that was good in concept because we eventually saw that in other Western RPGs where I could see it used better. But it was kind of like it just didn't work right. I felt like with Final Fantasy 2, like
easy to exploit as well.
Yeah, because you would just sit there and like punch your own characters and stuff, and like, like I don't know. It's just I didn't like it. I didn't like it. There's a lot of things I don't like about Final Fantasy 2, but that's one of them. So, did you have anything else you wanted to say about those before I move on to the next question?
Well, no. I mean, I guess I should also mention that in Final Fantasy Tactics, you can like get the enemy down to like one character, but then just like spam certain abilities to farm for job points, like on your own characters as well. Like you can like throw rocks at each other, and if
that's right.
they connect, you gain job points for that, which is like pretty silly.
Dude,
it's what you can do to like level up your job quickly.
Yeah. Have you tried playing that game recently?
No, not recently.
Like, okay, so like everything that you're saying is still like awesome. Okay, so you know you're like the class system and everything is fantastic, but I've tried playing it as an adult, and those battles, some of them,
it's slow. Yeah,
those random encounters, 45 minutes. Like, dude, you'll just get into a random encounter with like 30 monks. You're like, what the hell? You know, it's like the town's right there. So
yeah,
it's just
it's a slow paced game because the battles take so long.
Yeah, but it's worth it. It's a good game. We have Shatera who says this came up in a conversation the other day. I teach literature, mostly American and British literature, at an international school in Taiwan. Very cool. A coworker was asking me about how things get considered to be included in the literature textbook, and I really didn't have a good answer. This isn't the question, by the way, because we don't know either. But my question for you, it's just context. My question for you is, if the Board of Education made you select one game that students had to experience and study like you did in high school, what would it be and why? This can be any game, not just a JRPG. So the Board of Education is forcing us to select a game. I don't know what the consequences if we don't are, but That's what the Board of Education is making us. So, do you have anything lined up? Because I have a game lined up.
I have a couple, but do you want to go first
Sure.
on this one? What do you think?
Sorry, I had to get some water there. Yeah, so I think I put some thought into this and I was going back and forth on a couple different games. And I get like sometimes when I think of these premises, I think too much into them. But I'm thinking these kids are in high school. So it's probably not a good idea to pick a mature rated title, right? Because I mean, I'm sure like when I was in high school, I played M rated games, but you don't want to upset parents or anything like that. So I'm not doing any M rated games. That was my first thing. And the second thing is, some of these kids, they've never played a game before. Some of them are very experienced with games, and I can think of some great games, but I don't know if they would have the patience to get through them, especially since some of them are older and everything like that. And so for me, I'm still going to pick a retro styled game, but I think I would go with Undertale just because you can beat it in 6 hours and there's replayability, but it also introduces a lot of interesting questions about just accepting the status quo, I guess, and not really thinking about your actions and the impact that they're having and just basically going with the flow because that's what we've always done. And I think that would introduce a lot of interesting discussions. I think that would show students how storytelling through gameplay is different from reading a book or watching a movie. And I think that it's short enough that even the slackers would be able to finish it in a semester, because you can beat it in 6 hours. If you're not experienced with games, it might take like 10 hours. But, I think it's a good introduction piece. It's not going to take a lot of resources. So basically, any computer could probably play it. You can get it on the Switch if you don't, but I mean, you can play it on most laptops. It's not that big of a deal. So I think that's the game that I would probably pick. Granted, it is slightly mature, I guess, but I think for high schoolers, it's definitely okay. So, did you ever play Undertale?
I haven't played it yet, no.
Oh, you'll have to
But
check it out sometime.
I am kind of aware of what you're talking about as far as the example goes of really thinking about your choices, right, that you make in the game.
Yeah, and just the
that's
impact and challenging your thought processes. But that's my first and best pick. What do you got?
Well, I was thinking like, and I asked Shotera for a qualification or like a clarification about like, can it be more than just an RPG? Because I was thinking about the question, and we're RPG podcasts, and I was like, well, of the RPGs that I guess are like well written from an English standpoint, I don't know if I've played very many of them. And another issue is RPGs are very long, like they're very long games.
Yeah.
And so if I was to like create a assignment, like, is it really fair to like give a student like essentially like give me a book report on like Xenoblade Chronicles, right? And the game's like 100 hours long.
They've never played a game in their life either.
Yeah, like that's a little unreasonable for a school assignment, I think, And plus, I think a lot of JRPGs are not necessarily well written. I think they have some good written characters and like good character moments that happen throughout the stories. But it's hard to pick very many that you're like, oh, that was like really well written, like from beginning to end, because they're full of so much. They're aware that they're games, and so there's a lot of scenarios in them that are like very much filler or like for the gameplay specifically, that isn't really progressing the plot very meaneful,
Right.
So I asked for clarification, and he said it could be any game, and so I was like, okay, and
solitaire.
no, so I was also thinking like, well, maybe I went in the direction you did, thinking like we should make it about the games, not really about the subject of like English or like literature, right? But like how do games convey their story specifically? And this is an M-rated game, but I thought if I could allow the players, the the students, right, to play the first 10 minutes of The Last of Us, right? Now that's an M-rated game, but that
Well,
first 10 minutes there's no gore, right? There's no gore. There's very minimal.
possible dead person.
Yeah, but like
Yeah.
basically until you see the title screen, right? And I don't want to spoil it too much for people who haven't played it, but it's
Okay,
like
so the
very
first 10 minutes, that's
yeah,
reasonable.
it's very impactful, right? And I could theoretically, have the class break up into small groups, right? And go in the corner and like put the headphones on or whatever, right? And there's like 1 or 2 PS4s over there, and just play through the first 10 minutes and kind of glance over my shoulder, see if that they've gone past that. It's like, okay, reset button, like that's as far as you go, right? And then ask them how that made them feel like playing through that part of the game.
Yeah.
And what about it do you think like really made it special, or what about it made you feel that way? And again, I don't want to spoil it too much for people who don't know, or maybe I should just spoil it. What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna spoil it. So if you don't want to be spoiled on The Last of Us, you have a few seconds to click away here. But
The Last of Us, the first one, not part 2.
the first one, yes, part 2 has not come out yet. This is a spoiler for the first game. Playing as Joel's daughter, right, in the beginning of the story, like that's the first character you play as. Just that makes you care more about when she dies in like 8 to 10 minutes, right? Like that's the character they gave you, and they gave you her perspective and how scared she was and like what's going on. Like all of a sudden it was a normal day, a normal night, right? But then like their
So
world
they're
was kind of
watching
falling
TV
apart.
with her dad. Yeah.
Yeah, and she fell asleep on the couch, got put to bed, and then like all of a sudden the world is kind of falling apart. And then you play as Joel, like trying to protect that character, because you as the player, that's all you know, right? That's of this world, all you know is that little girl's perspective. And so then when she dies, it helps that it's well written and well acted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it really hits you because you played as that character, right? Whereas if that whole thing was just a non-interactive, like 5-minute story sequence, right? You'd still feel bad for Joel. You'd be like, "Oh, that's awful. His daughter was killed, at such a young age, and they've already it's just him and her alone. Like that's all he has. She's all he has." You would still feel bad in the sense that you would feel bad if you saw that like on film, right? But it hits harder because you, the player, like played as that character and controlled the character, I think. And so anyway, and I know that the developers have mentioned that too. They've said like you need to be able to play the character for that to really have the full impact that they wanted. So
That's an interesting choice. I mean,
yeah, I wonder how many of high school students would like pick up on that, and if it would impact you more if you have played a lot of video games versus have not, right? And so you could kind of gauge like the class and take like a survey, like how many hours of gaming do you play every day, right? And then like categorize each group, right? And maybe even split them into groups based on that. Like you'll have the gamers group, and then you'll have like the casuals group, right? Or the completely unfamiliar with video games group. And then ask them how much that opening sequence like really got to them or got an emotional response out of them.
Stan, would you be really disappointed if like students were not moved at all?
No, I think that's going to happen with anything.
Okay. Yeah.
That's going to happen. There's going to be people who like watch Schindler's List or whatever and just like, it was okay, It doesn't like.
You're just beating your head to the wall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about The Last of Us though is because it kind of sucks because you would have to stop it at the 10-minute mark because roughly because it does get a little bit more mature after that. But you can also tie in the fact of how Joel relates to Ellie, right?
Yes.
Because that reminds him and you, the player, of his daughter. So
yeah, and then the end of the game, there's like no boss fight at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It just ends with him holding Ellie in his arms, like trying to escape from the fireflies who are like chasing after him. Right.
It's very similar.
And it's exactly how the game opened up. It was him carrying his daughter around, like trying to escape, right, the chaos of what was happening. So it's like a very interesting parallel. The game ends exactly the way it began, just with a different character.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because I feel that when I was a kid, a lot of times I would have like English teachers and stuff that would have us watch old movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I got a lot out of that just watching like older movies and just kind of giving analysis on them and just talking about it. And like, I think if there were schools that could do more of this kind of analysis of story elements and the gameplay aspect and how that enhances the story, I think that would be very interesting.
Like if there was a way to just take a slice out of certain games and have like kind of a synopsis that leads up to that point, and then like the students could like play through a section, right, and then move on, right, and then that's the end, and it's like, well, how did you feel about that? What did the game do to like convey what did you get out of it, and what do you think the game did to convey that to you, to give you that feeling, right? That would be very interesting. I think maybe someday that'll be a thing.
More recognized. Yeah. Well, we didn't pick Super Mario, so
no.
How did that flag feel when he went down the pole?
What is the symbolism of stomping on the Goomba, right? Yeah.
Who does this symbolize? Is this sticking it to the man? Yeah. Anyways, all right. So I think that's going to wrap up this week's podcast. We want to thank everyone that checked it out with us live here. And if you're not checking it out live, that's okay as well. We want to appreciate you watching us on YouTube. We do have an audio version as well. And there are links in the description of this YouTube video. So you can go listen to that in Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. It's all over the place. So you can check it out there. And we appreciate everyone again checking us out. And we will have to see you all next week.